Um, it's been a holy, auspicious weekend, and many of us, I think, are still living in the presence of Swamiji, feeling his stillness in our meditations, in our gatherings. You can feel his living presence. And I remember for some of us, at least I speak for myself, when I came to the path, I was looking for inner communion with God. And I remember the question, the nagging question that I had, how do you know whether you're doing the right thing? How do you know right from wrong? Because we often do things thinking it is the right thing. And so one day I was given a moment of reflection, and I wondered to myself, did I really do the right thing, or did I do it because it was convenient for me? And that question kind of alerted me to how am I living my life? And the thought then came, maybe the saints know, because they have lived a good life. And so I began to look for autobiographies of saints. And I thought to myself, and of course in time I found the autobiography of a yogi. But the point I was trying to make is, the thought came to me, where will one find saints in today's world? And many years back, and I had that question, I continued my search, and time found Ananda, meditation, started serving, and by God's grace there was no looking back. Swami Kriyananda ji came to India in 2003, and in 2008 I took my classes. He came to Pune in 2008, and they started building the work here in Pune. And a few years later I remembered the question that I had, where will I find saints? And the thought dawned on me, well, God has placed you in the midst of his saints. And what a powerful life we have in the example of Swami Kriyananda ji, a truly heroic, and as one of the saints described, a rarest of the rare discipleship. I grew up as a Christian, a very religious family, good discipline, but over time I began to get disappointed with the lack of spirit. I didn't find life in the religious life that I was exposed to. And when I came to Ananda, I loved the spirit. And I started one day at a time, one program at a time, one satsang at a time, and grew to love it. And especially I remember very clearly feeling that the spirit of leadership that Swamiji brought was so precious, it was so open, it was so creative. And this is not easy, friends, especially when we are talking about religious or spiritual works, because especially after a guru's passing, the tendency, there is insecurity, there is fear in the minds of disciples, and the foremost thought is, how do we preserve what the guru brought? And we know that the spirit, Satchitanand, bliss, ever new bliss, is not only about preservation. God manifests himself through creation, through preservation, and through ever new, which we call as destruction, but the destruction paves its way for something new. So bliss is is ever new. And I thought Swamiji's life very beautifully captured God in his Trinity, Om Tat Sat. He was creative, he was orthodox, where he knew he had to preserve Yogananda ji's teachings and the spirit of the teachings, and he knew how to facilitate and pave the way for an ever new expression of Ananda, joy, of awakening the joy of which we are made. Joy, 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 ever new joy. And when I began to get to know more about Swamiji, it started through the books, because at that time I would stay in the city and we would go for weekends for programs that happened in the ashram outside the city. And I had attended many satsangs. I did not ask for any personal time with Swamiji, and I want to share a story soon about that. So my interaction with Swamiji was always or rather my experience of Swamiji was always in a group setting. And the first group setting, I remember that first meeting and being in the presence of Swamiji was in the city, where when they came to Pune, they first set base in the city, and from the city they would set up the place outside. And I remember looking, so Swamiji was giving the satsang in the clubhouse of the society they were living in. And I remember looking into Swamiji's eyes, and it was like a journey through eternity. It was like a vast, infinite expanse. You know, those eyes were like a door to a vast, infinite expanse. I was so raw at that time, coming from a religion which had almost ossified, and I was just beginning to understand energy, what the breath feels like, sensitizing my own feelings, trying to understand what is awareness, what is consciousness. So a few things stayed in my mind, but much of it was lost and was revealed after Swamiji's passing to me. But nevertheless, there were some of these moments, and especially this moment, I remember looking into his eyes, and there was just infinity beyond those eyes. And I thought to myself, he must know everything that we are thinking of. And in those days, but you see, you're given these moments of high reflection, and then you go back to what the habits and samskars that are strong inside you. So I would attend a few satsangs, and Swamiji would repeat a few stories again and again and again. And new as I was, I would remember, why is Swamiji repeating the story? I just heard the story in the last satsang. And for quite a while I had that question until, you know, I began to understand. And I remember Jayaji brought this to the foreground. One day he asked me, at that time I was still Blazy. He said, Blazy, why do you think Swamiji repeated stories, like certain stories again and again? And he said, can you remember which were those stories? And I remembered he would talk about, I was a Greek, that is one of the stories that he would often talk about. And what Jayaji was trying to convey is, the spiritual path is a broad sweep of expanse. There are many approaches, there are many subtle truths, infinite in their expression. After all, bliss is ever new. But Swamiji was trying to uplift our consciousness, and he saw that our consciousness, in order to grow, needed to get a few principles very strongly and very clearly. We needed to develop clarity in certain ways, and he would repeat those stories again and again. For example, very often we don't have faith in ourselves. We are often thinking about the mistakes that we have made and the guilt, and he would bring out those stories that again and again told us, remember, you are a child of God, your potential is infinite. And so I remember later understanding that Swamiji is trying to invite us to take the truth behind these stories, the principle behind these stories, deep in our consciousness. And I remember often, now I think many of us would have read many stories, many books that have been written about Swamiji, and in time many more books will come, friends. His life is a life on which many books can be written. And in many ways, as we have seen even Ashaji writing in a book on the light bearer, through his life, Swamiji was almost like a sacrificial lamb, paving the way for the spirit and the principles of Dwapara Yuga to, you know, be given expression. It will take time for it to find roots, and you and I would be those hands and feet that would allow, through the example of our lives, continuing the legacy of Master and Swamiji and helping to establish the roots. But it is not an easy journey for Swamiji. He was a very high soul. I'm not a person qualified to say that, but we read, as Ashaji writes, a free soul who came into this world. But he had, as Master himself would say, you have no idea what you have in Walters. You should mix with Walters more. If Walter would have come before, you know, these teachings would have gone all over the world. These little hints that Yoga Master dropped to his disciples already declared, when Swamiji was all of 22, what a great soul had come to the work. And of course, Swamiji, through the course of his life, revealed that greatness. But it is interesting, friends, and due course for our own reflection, that greatness was persecuted in a big way. It was not easy the path was not easy. He was persecuted by his own Guru Bhais, and deeply pained when Swamiji prayed to Babaji, Babaji, why are my own brothers and sisters persecuting me so much? I'm trying to do your work. And Babaji told him, they are all my children. Now, it's not easy, but Swamiji's life shows the power of transformation when we cling to God's consciousness and we do not allow ourselves to be defeated by forces of darkness. In again and again in his book on divine friendship, many letters of counsels, I would highly recommend all of us to read that book. Again and again he would say, I have become aware, and this he wrote in the 1990s, he said, I have become aware of two great forces. He said, there is one great force that wants to universalize Master's work, and there is another great force equally trying to stop that work and project Master as a little saintlet, as a beloved founder of an organization. And that was the persecution that he was trying to, transcend and be a channel for Yoganandaji's true mission of the work, which was for everybody, not just a monastery for a few people, but Yoganandaji had come for every soul. He called his work a new dispensation, and the spirit of which Swamiji was able to catch through his constant attunement and reveal that to the world. And the freshness of the spirit that Swamiji brought allows that work, that expansion, that universalization to continue. And that is the power, friends. What is the seed, thought and force behind what we put forth through our thoughts, through our actions? In Swamiji, it was a seed of spirit. His attunement with Master, he did not hesitate to make mistakes. His only one question was, what is the Guru's will? Well, it is interesting when we come to the path, we all have our notions of the spiritual path, to which many even advanced disciples can often fall. And we think, I came to meditate long hours, or this is my dharma and this is what I need to focus on, and so on and so forth. Many thoughts, take us astray. And on the other hand, there is just one simple question we need to reflect and answer, and that is, what is the Guru's will for me? Master said meditation is the highest activity. And so Swamiji, one day, Master gave him a task to do, and Swamiji was meditating. And he would meditate long hours, when he came to the path to Master. And the next day, Master asked him, Walters, what happened about, the task that I gave you? And Swamiji said, oh, Master, I'll do it. I haven't finished it. I was meditating. And Master said, in that case, Walters, meditate less. So you see, it can be confusing. Well, Master, you said that meditation is the highest activity. Well, but over and above, the highest and highest activity is that which the Guru wants you to do. So this is what is fascinating and adventurous about the spiritual path. God keeps it interesting. So it is a duty of the disciple, as Swamiji showed again and again, to constantly strive to live in attunement. What is your will, Master? What is your will? Never to presume on that will and say, oh, Master, okay, you told me to do this, okay, I'm going forward. No. Even then, again, as Swamiji says, maybe around the corner you need to take another turn without presuming that, okay, Master said, let's go straight, I go straight. No. Every moment we commune, we ask Master, we try to feel Master in our hearts. And this is a practice, friends. We might sometimes become dejected, disappointed, oh, I'm not able to feel Master's will. How do we do this? It is not easy. It comes through practice. As Swamiji would remind us again and again, practice when it is easy, which means in all the little things of life. They are not so little that we treat them trivially and keep God out of it. No. Every moment must be saturated with God's presence. That's the mission on the personal level that Yoganandaji and Swamiji came to share with us. Every moment needs to be lived in divine consciousness, which means we ask God, what is your will? What is it that you want me to do in this moment? And that's how, friends, we see newer, greater vistas of self offering opening before us. The great work is not out there. The great work is within. And through the great work out there that we are trying to fulfill, remember, the real great work is the transformation that must come within us. If the transformation is being stymied by habit patterns, by tendencies, by personal desires, selfish motives, the power of the divine consciousness that could otherwise have been ours in that process diminishes. I want to share this particular story. I remember at one satsang, Swamiji had tears in his eyes when he said at a satsang, he said, friends, the ego is the most difficult obstacle to overcome. It is not easy, friends. What stands between you and me is this instrument of God which has become corrupted with its selfish agenda. It's an instrument for the soul, and the whole journey of the path is the purification of this instrument, that it be restored to its true role as an instrument for soul consciousness. I remember the story when Swamiji, we know Swamiji's years in India, and towards the later part of his life and for most of his life, he was beset with problems with not only, on an outward level, his own body was a battleground on which many karmas were overcome, not only for people, not only for himself, but also for the world, for the work of yoga and the new expression of yoga in Dwapara Yuga. So he was often not well. And the monks used to stay in the ashram, and so he would meet the monks very often. And but the sisters, there were a few of us, we never had an opportunity to meet as a group, just like the monks did. So one of the sisters once, and we all felt that, when will we get to meet Swamiji? But we never put forth that request. So one day, one of the sisters came up to me and said, Swamiji has been meeting the monks regularly. Maybe we should also ask for a meeting with Swamiji. And much as it was also a secret desire in my own heart, I somehow outwardly just felt, it would be taking energy from Swamiji, and at this age he's already given so much, and he's coming all the way from America, from Italy to be with us. How can we ask more? So I said, that's right, dear sister, but I don't feel like, putting out such a request for the sisters. So we let that be. Now that night, or maybe a few nights, I forget, that night Swamiji came into my dream, and Narayani was wheeling him in, full of smiles, a lot of light. And a group of us are sitting in a semicircle, and Swamiji is coming in from the door, and Narayani is wheeling him in, and he is wheeling close to all of the people, is passing close to people. And I remember sitting towards the far end of the circle, and I was sitting like this, very egoic demeanor. And I was a little, hurt inside that, Swamiji wasn't paying any attention to the sisters. So Swamiji comes in, and he comes closer, and suddenly when he comes close, I just bow to him. And it was interesting. I woke up and I realized, Swami knows everything that is happening. He knew, the conversation probably that we had. He knew that we were wanting to meet him. So he came. You see, for Swamiji at that time, physical, astral, causal words, I guess they were all the same, because he said, I do not know where Kriyananda ends and Yogananda begins. You see, so he had become one with Master's consciousness. So he could meet you on other planes if you were open. And I just realized, for my own sake, we may, outwardly, yes, we are striving, we are trying our best to be a channel for, a higher consciousness. But you see, subliminally, at a subconscious level, there are tendencies still awake and alive. And in that dream, subconsciously, I realized that the ego was still an obstacle. The ego was still an obstacle to that understanding that we don't need time and energy in that way from Swamiji. He has already given us everything we need. So yes, I had that understanding, and yes, at the same time, there was the egoic hurt also that was there as a awake and ready, enemy trying to intrude when the time was right. So often, and that was a lesson for me, that we should not take things for granted. Our understanding needs to be taken deeper and deeper and deeper by right practice, by repetition. That is when we begin to uproot old seeds of karma and supplant them with new, fresh seeds that are rooted in divine consciousness. A devotee who was treating Swamiji towards the end of his life had an opportunity when he was in the hospital. He was in bliss. The doctors and nurses at the hospital were astounded to have a patient like Swami Kriyananda, and they would all peep through the door of his room and looking at, look at this person, he is so full of light, does not show any intimation of pain. And this devotee was wanting to meet Swamiji, but of course people were kind of refusing, declining her request, because of course Swamiji was not well and he was in the hospital. But I think Swamiji knew of her wish, and when there was an opportunity, he called her and he said, come in. And the devotee got a few moments with Swamiji, and in the course, and this is one advice that Swamiji gave that stays with her, even today she repeats it. And he said, I won't take the name, he called her name and he said, live for God. And so simple, friends, like we had in this reading, Swamiji's life too was an expression of what else there is to this world, to this creation, except delusion and suffering. The only purpose of our life is to love God more and to live for God alone. I remember during this, there was this public talk that Swamiji was giving in the city. Whenever he used to come to Pune, we would arrange for a public talk, because he was trying to reach out to people in those early years. And this was a talk in Symbiosis in Pune. And again, Swamiji's health would be frail. And the morning of the talk, we got intimation from the spiritual directors that please keep Swamiji in prayer. Swamiji is having a bad attack of, I think, probably kidney stones or something, but he was in great pain. And we do not know if Swamiji may be able to do the talk today. So it was in the midst of preparations. We had already, gotten ready with, ready to prepare and ready for the talk. So we started praying, and we thought, who knows, maybe if Swamiji is not able to make it, the spiritual directors may give the talk. But so we continued our preparations, and we were at the hall at 3 o'clock or 3:30. And later we got word Swamiji will give the talk. So we were there to receive Swamiji, and we were standing at the entrance, and Swamiji came in with Narayani holding him, and it was heartbreaking to see Swamiji. He was extremely fragile, and with great determination, you could see that he was putting every step forward with great conscious determination. He would take a step, move a few steps, and he would pause. And he walked that way up to the green room, and then he rested. I remember seeing him at that stage. I wondered to myself, how will Swamiji give this talk? It was a talk of 1 hour. Anyway, it was time for the talk, and they bring Swamiji to the stage. He was sitting on a chair this time, because he could not stand for the whole 1 hour. So he was sitting and he was giving the talk. Even through the talk, I remember, friends, every line was given with great effort and conscious summoning of willpower. And after 10, 15, 20 minutes of attending the talk, my heart was in my mouth. And in my mind, I was telling myself, this is a true hero. And at the same time, I had doubts, how long will Swamiji continue like this? Or maybe he might say that, I can't continue anymore, and he might call on Nirmalaji and Dharmadasji, who were the spiritual directors at that time. I thought maybe any time he will just maybe invite them to give the talk. But friends, he continued like that for 1 hour. And at one point I realized, this is not Swami Kriyananda in this form. Yogananda ji has taken over. Because in his form, it was almost, he was on, I won't say he was incapable, but that form was almost incapable. But Master's consciousness, Swamiji's power of determination and will became the channel and instrument for Master to take over. And he spoke like that for 1 hour and he took questions after that. I don't think I will ever forget this moment, and it is imprinted on my soul when I saw for the first time in my life true heroism, a true disciple of God living for Him. And I understood on a deeper level what Yogananda ji told Swamiji, living for God is martyrdom. So forget yourself, self-forgetfulness. All that Swamiji ever wanted and strived to be is to be that instrument for Master. And through hell or high water, whether his body crumbled under the weight of it, he made sure that his spirit did not buckle under the forces of darkness. He said again and again that whenever a good work is trying to be accomplished, he said, an equal force of darkness will always try to stop us. And we, friends, often give in to that force. And suddenly we become aware. The moment we give in, it's that split second, the moment we give in to that force of darkness, we suddenly become aware anew of our limitations, of our fears, of, I don't want to be overconfident. Yes, but Swamiji showed again and again that all it takes is to keep your faith in the Guru and know that the Guru can do anything through you. Look at his work, friends. The life, the books, the music, and he would say again and again, I didn't do any of this. Master did it through me. And this is the power of one man. The power of one man, the power of one soul, when rooted in the consciousness of God, is infinity itself. So, do not allow yourselves to become overcome by thoughts of weaknesses or limitations. The moment Master would say, catch that first thought, and the moment such thoughts come, meditate on Swamiji's life, meditate on the Master's life. They come to show again and again the greatness that lies within each one of us. But that greatness will not automatically just try to pour forth. The greatness has to be awakened. And Swamiji says a very important thing in his book, In Divine Friendship. He says, the duality of this world in and of itself does not produce disharmony. Look at the duality that exists in nature. Night follows day, seasons flow easily. Is there any disharmony? No. How do we come into the disharmony of good versus evil? It's when we personalize that struggle. It's when we make, through our reactions, when we give strength to an aspect of duality and take it away from divine consciousness, that is what produces disharmony. It is trying to bring conflict into these opposites in and of themselves. As Babaji told us again and again, and Master said, it's a part of duality. It's a law of duality. And that law is in harmony. As we see, it works very nicely in nature. Why doesn't it work nicely in our consciousness? That is for us to reflect on. How do we keep this balance of duality? By coming to that center point of rest in God. And where does God rest? He is inside us. He is within us. So let's not beat duality with a stick. We need to simply lift our consciousness in the light. And in the light of God's consciousness, duality is a beautiful expanse of God's loving, educating, entertaining play for each one of us. And we just simply need to learn how to play this game with love for God instead of love for ourselves. So with that, friends, let's take a brief moment to close our eyes inwardly expressing our gratitude to Swamiji